Namaskar. My name is Amitabh Bhattacharya. I'm the founder director of banglanatok.com, and we are on the third day of the Ripples Festival supported by British Council. We thank British Council for supporting this wonderful festival, Ripples. Let me start today's webinar on, should I first, let me actually share the speakers today, and then I will go one after one. So first, the webinar, Heritage and Resilience, reflecting on the rejuvenation of the creative sector in new normal. We are doing this Ripples Festival in and around Bolpur, Ilam Bajar, which is near Shantiniketan, Joydev Kenduli, which is the Baul Akhra around, Shola of Shurul, and of course, a theatre festival. We are also doing a tribute to Shakespeare at Tepantar Theatre Village. Along with that, we are having this webinar every day at 4 to 5:30. Today, fantastic speakers are with us. Dr. Joseph Lowe is joining us from Singapore also, and we will be starting with his comments after this. Thank you, Joe, for joining us at Ripples webinar. Thank you. Next, we have Komal Malakar. I said Shola of Shurul, so Komal Malakar is with us. He has joined us live from Shurul. ধন্যবাদ কমল বাবু আমাদের সঙ্গে থাকার জন্য ধন্যবাদ my colleague Rai is there with Kamal Babu for any translation or anything. Next we have the great Baul from Joydev Kenduli, Lakhon Das Baul. Lakhon রয়েছেন আমাদের সঙ্গে লক্ষণ ধন্যবাদ আমাদের সঙ্গে জয়েন করার জন্য জয় গুরু আর লক্ষণ ছায়া এবং তাদের পুত্র সবাইকে ধন্যবাদ এবং তাদের সঙ্গে Arpan, my colleague, is there with Lakhon for any of the assistance in translation or anything. Arpan himself is also a wonderful Dotara player. So next, Simon. Simon could not enter yet, but he will be joining us in, ASAP. But before we go for that, let me first take a 1-minute introductory remark from first Lakhon Das Baul. Lakhon, একটা ছোট্ট গান যদি গাও আর একটু যদি কিছু বলে আমাদের এই আজকের ওয়েবিনার if you start.
অঙ্গ শীতল হবে প্রাণ জুড়াবে মন লাগলে গায়ে বৃক্ষের কিরণ গৌর কল্প মুসকে যা রে মন জয় গুরু জয় গুরু জয় গুরু এখন চলছে আমাদের রিপেলস ফেস্টিভ্যাল এই ফেস্টিভ্যালে আমি যোগদান করতে পেরে আমি খুবই আনন্দিত এই ফেস্টিভ্যালের জন্য সারা বিশ্বের মানুষ আমাদের এই অনুষ্ঠান দেখতে পাচ্ছেন আমাদের জয়দেবে আসছেন জয়দেব সম্বন্ধে জানছেন বাউল গান শুনতে পাচ্ছেন আশ্রম দেখছেন আমরাও বিভিন্ন দেশের মানুষের সাথে কথা বলতে পারছি যার জন্য আমরা গর্বিত জয় গুরু
জয় গুরু জয় গুরু জয় গুরু তোমার কাছে আমরা আবার ফিরবো ধন্যবাদ ধন্যবাদ Lakhon is very happy that Ripples Festival is covering has included his Accra, and he's very happy about the fact that so many people are visiting Joydev, as well as so many people are at the webinar through the technology is watching the Baul song. So wonderful. After Lakhon, a 1-minute introductory from Kamal. Kamal Malakar. He is in Shurul.
হ্যাঁ, আমি কমল মালাকার, বীরভূমের বাসিন্দা, এই সুরগ্রামের। এবং আজকে যে এই ব্রিটিশ কাউন্সিল থেকে যে ব্যবস্থা করা হয়েছে, আর শুধু তাই নয়, বাংলানাটক.com এ তুলতে, ফলে আমাদের কি হয়েছে, গোটা বীরভূমের যে শিল্প সংস্কৃতি, এই সংস্কৃতিকে আমরা সারা পৃথিবী জুড়ে ধরে ফোকাস করতে পারছি। এর জন্য আমরা ব্রিটিশ কাউন্সিলকে অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানাই, এবং আমাদের কাজ যে এত প্রসারিত হবে, এর জন্য আমরা খুবই আনন্দিত।
ধন্যবাদ, ধন্যবাদ কমল বাবু, আপনার কাছেও আমরা ফিরবো। He is one of the finest artists of Shola. He is very happy about the fact that the culture of Shantiniketan, Bolpur, Birbhum, Bardhaman, that entire belt, which we'll call in Bengali as Rar Bangla. You know, Bangla is Bengal and Rar is that side, red soil. So the Bengal of red soil's culture is being promoted, and he's very happy about the fact that Ripples Festival covered them. So now, a 1-minute introductory remark from Joe, Professor Dr.
Hi.
Joseph Lowe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here, and it's such a privilege to sort of peep into, you know, the Bangla culture, you know, the Katan yesterday, I think that was, and then also the music, and it's been fantastic. I think one takeaway I had from yesterday was when Amber came on and she summarized the whole response to the COVID as heart, head, heart, hand, and hope. And I think that was my takeaway, and that was very powerful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Lowe. So that's a wonderful introductory comment from everyone. But we are still, I'm waiting for Simon. Simon could not make it yet, but I'm sure he'll be joining very shortly. But in the meantime, I request Dr. Lowe, Joseph Lowe, to start his presentation, sharing his expertise on the heritage and resilience.
Thank you very much, Amitabha. Let me try and get things right.
Yes, we all can see it.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And it's such an, as I said, it's such an honor and pleasure to be here to partake in a festival and to talk about a very important where we are now. I mean, you know, in this COVID, we are still in this pandemic actually. But what I would like to talk about is that, you know, talk about hope, that after this COVID, you know, what hope, what future do we have, you know, for the creative sector? And in terms of that, I'm talking about introducing some ideas about the new paradigm, you know, in the post-COVID world. Okay, so the two key questions here that was given to me by the organizers is lessons from the COVID-19 pandemic. How can we build resilience? And the other question that was posed to me is that what needs to be done to sustain the development of the creative industry, especially in the context of 2021 being declared as the International Year for the Creative Economy for Sustainable Development. Now, the caveat before I go on is that I'm going to talk about the craft sector as an exemplar of the culture and creative industry. So that's because of my experience, and that's because of my area of expertise and knowledge. And also, in terms of sustainable development, I'm going to link it up with building resilience, because in order for a sector to be sustainable, it needs to be resilient to external threat. So I'm going to put both on the same level. Okay, so we've been talking about resilience. Everybody's talking about resilience, about, you know, how do we build greater resilience to the sector in a post-COVID world. Then I wanted to ask myself, what is the real meaning of resilience? So I did some research, and in the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society, they came out with this pretty good definition of resilience that relates to the ability of systems and people to effectively respond and adapt to changing circumstances and to develop skills, capacity, behavior, actions to deal with adversities. So it's the system and people to be able to respond and to adapt. I think that's very important, to respond and adapt. And how do they do it? Through skills, capacities, behavior, and actions. So these are the 4 areas that I'll be talking about in terms of how the craft sector then can build greater resilience for future pandemic. Okay. Now, the background of this is that World Craft Council International and British Council in late November and early December held a series of webinars. And the aim of this webinar was to take this opportunity to explore and build greater resilience for the craft sector so as to mitigate against future crises. So touch wood, if, COVID-25 happens again, that the sector wouldn't have got to go back and learn and build from ground zero, but actually would be able to recall past experiences and learn lessons so that we don't have got to go through the same chaos again. So that was the actual idea of the webinar, to take this opportunity as a lessons to learn so that when future crises happen, be it man-made or nature, like climate change or financial crisis or political crisis, the craft sector is better to deal with it. It's better to adapt and respond. So the teams that was included craft and crisis, craft and the circular economy. This is to deal with climate change, craft, health and well-being, as in now, the COVID crisis, craft and cosmopolitan and localism, and the local ecology of crafts. And these were some of the teams that were talked about during the webinar. Okay, now, what were the findings from the discussion? Okay, so through the analysis of the discussion, we found that craft is only a part of the ecology of the community. It is interconnected with other aspects of the community. Hence, in order to build resilience, to build greater resilience for the craft sector, it's imperative for the craft sector to work with other community stakeholders to promote the well-being of the entire community itself. It is through reaching out to other sectors of the community that the craft sector can be secured when threatened with potential crisis. As in all crises, it's the entire community that's affected, not only the craft sector, as you can see. If there is, an earthquake, it's the whole community that's devastated. If there is a financial crisis, everybody is affected, okay? So therefore, the insurance premium that the craft sector has to pay is to invest in the community social capital through strengthening its linkages and working together for the common good of the entire community. So not only the craft sector itself, but it has got to blanket the whole community itself. So why is that the case? Because currently the craft sector is structured into operating its own silos, sort of working back, in relatively cocooned and detached manner. And this is because it's being directed by the macroeconomics and the commercial framework of the world. So for example, it is, one can say that yes, but then, the craft sector is linked, but it's only linked because of the supply chain analysis, all right? It's supply chain where you link to suppliers or logistics or the market or retailers. It's linked in the supply chain. And a lot of times from the craft sector, we talk about challenges. We are all very familiar with it because we are all working in craft sectors, how we lack access to good quality, to capital, to markets, to information, and the craft sector is always screaming and crying out for the need for design, innovation, market knowledge, skills upgrading. So we are always looking at these problems of the craft sector within its own silo. Okay, so in this proposal, we're talking about perhaps we need to have a paradigm shift in order for the craft to work beyond its current silo and to strengthen its linkages, we need to work with other communities, but firstly, we need to restructure our thinking. We need to have a paradigm shift. So the sector needs to work from a place of asset and not from a place of deficit. So for example, rather than look at negative, we need to look at what is advantages. We need to look at craft being a victim to a craft being a hero, from a deficit to a plenty, to withholding to offering, from looking inward, from looking at inward and outward, and looking at macro, we need to look at macro and micro together. All right, so we need to change our perspective. Now, I've been talking to my colleague Ting from Smithsonian Institute in DC, and he very interestingly presented a community ecosystem model where it's a pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid, we would have the community's disposition, the values and the current status of the community. We have the context of the community, who are the stakeholders of the community, what are the problems that the community is facing, the identification of needs, what needs to be done, solution. And at the apex, the top of it, is in terms of improved community well-being. Because when only you have community well-being, that the whole system can be secured in an equilateral triangle, so that when there is an external threat, it's the response of the whole community that comes to address, the crisis itself. I've included here the reference that you can click on, to read more about Ting's model. All right, so looking at this model, the premise in the new proposition to respond to build greater resilience for a craft sector is that if and when a commodity, an activity, an institution contributes to the well-being of the community, it will be an asset to the community. And because it's an asset, the community will naturally safeguard and protect the commodity, activity, and institution against external shocks, while reinvesting to secure its future. Therefore, for the craft sector, in terms of mitigating against future crises, it is imperative for the craft sector to be seen as a community asset by contributing to the community's well-being. So when external shocks happens, like COVID, it's anticipated that the community, the entire community, will gather together to safeguard and secure the craft sector. Therefore, the stewardship of the community is not the craft sector itself, but rather the entire community. Okay, so the questions I have for the craft sector now is that what roles can the craft sector play to promote the well-being of the community? What can crafts do? How can crafts do to assist in the developing of the well-being of the community? And finally, who can craft sector collaborate and partner to bring about greater community well-being? Okay, so in terms of roles, we look at different sectors of the community, and here I'm only bringing up two sectors. One is cultural development, and the other is spiritual development. So questions that comes in will be, how can craft enable members of the community to recognize, explore, and understand their own cultural assumptions and values? What are the ways that craft can be used to enable members of the community to embrace and understand cultural diversity by bringing them into contact with attitudes, values, and traditions of other cultures? So these are some of the very fundamental questions that you have got to ask, not what can craft gain in cultural development, but the question of what can craft do to contribute to cultural development. Similarly, I have proposed here spiritual development, and what can crafts offer in terms of providing insights, principles, belief, attitudes, values, which guides and motivate community members through crafts, okay? So I will not go through all the questions, but perhaps you can also think about other areas, other contexts of the community in terms of social justice. And I think a lot of people are already doing this in terms of social justice about what can craft contribute in the area of gender equality, for example. In terms of environment conservation, I think that's also a lot of areas that has been done by craft, all right, to promote environmental conservation. So these are the areas that you have got to think in terms of where can craft contribute, rather what can they do to craft, okay? So what can craft do? So in terms of education, what roles can craft play in early years education? How can craft add value to education? So for example, people who do weaving will know that weaving is actually a very mathematical process. So can craft be included in mathematics lessons in school for children to learn mathematics through weaving? It's that type of change that we have. Right now, children are going to school and craft is only offered as maybe at best a extracurricular activity. If you have time, you do craft. If you don't have time, you leave it. But what if craft is being integrated into the education system to serve mathematics, for example? Health and well-being, we all know, we all say, craft is very good for creativity. It helps us think out the box. It can be very relaxing and things like that. But what if we mainstream craft into mental well-being of the community? What if it's being introduced? I know maybe it's not possible in India where you don't have an old folks home, but in the West, in Singapore, we do have, care homes for the elderlies. And perhaps that could be mainstream, make craft can be mainstream in terms of crochet, in terms of dexterity skills, eyes-hands coordination and things like that. In terms of public spaces, I think that's very interesting. I mean, I was in Bombay International Airport, and there was a whole mural of crafts on the wall of different windows that goes into different pots, and that was really fantastic. And I think hats off to Rajiv that actually promoted that 2% of public buildings must include craft. So it's craft roles to play in the public space and landscape. Museums, Center of Learning, cultural centers, religious organizations, youth, and I think the list goes on, and I'm not going to go into all this. I mean, you can reference that. So from the webinar series, we analyzed the topics that surfaced during the webinar series, and we also found that there are technical teams that needs to be identified in order for craft to build greater resilience. For example, the need for better evidence through collecting empirical data and statistics for stronger impact. And I was very glad yesterday when Jonathan, I think, from British Council provided a report on taking the temperature or something on the impact of COVID. And, that's the type of thing that we need, because craft as an informal sector is very difficult to gather information. And therefore, we just need to make craft visible through empirical data and statistics and not just, anecdotal nice stories. The other thing that we found out is that there's an urgency to cultivate the principles of circular economy to combat climate change. And that I don't have to elaborate. We all suffer from climate change wherever you are now. The need to identify, promote, and protect craft's local attributes in the context of the new global cosmopolitan and local context. And I think this is what you've already been doing in terms of doing the GI and the protection of traditional knowledge and resources. The prerequisite for youth engagement to secure craft future. And this is very, very important. It was really, really heartwarming for me to hear Takia Bigan. Yesterday, she was doing the Katan. And I was really impressed that, through her handiwork, that she's able to support the education of her children to university. And that's something to be lauded about. But my question is that if they're in the university and doing, fantastic things like, professions like, I don't know, engineering or teaching or whatever, My question is that then who is going to take after Katan after her? So it's how brought the whole thing. It's like great to have this opportunity, but youth also need to come back to do Katan at a different level. If not, no one is going to do Katan after her because her children are already professionals and engineers and teachers and whatever. So that's a question for us to think about. And finally, is the interweaving of craft and the digital in order to expand and explore the relevancy of craft while bridging divides, geographical, generational, analog and digital, tangible and intangible. Thus, the intensification of craft linkages with its community is necessary to build greater resilience, but by itself, it is not sufficient. We really need to think about technical issues that's related to craft. Now, how do we operationalize this? In order to operationalize this concept, it's important to have a centralized authority that's impartial to implement and coordinate this work. And this is because one needs to appreciate and comprehend communities' well-being from the macro perspective, because we're all working in silos, in individual cells, you know, in terms of craft, in terms of community, in terms of legal, in terms of economic. We need a central body to look at all of this and analyze it, all of this. Okay, so examples. So the other one is the ability to coordinate with multiple sectors and agencies. So craft needs to work with the hospital, that needs to work with the education system, that needs to work with, I don't know, the municipality, that needs to work with kindergarten. So it needs to coordinate all these together. And it needs to be impartial, all right? It needs to step away and be objective to look at the contributions and the deficits of each sector. So examples will be city mayors, regional councils, village leaders, elders, you know, and all these people, right? So this is just, so in conclusion, resilience is being defined as the ability of systems and people to effectively respond, to adapt to changing circumstances and to deal with adversities. So we need to improve skills, capacity, behavior, and actions. But for me, before we can even do that, we need to change our mindset from negative to positive, disadvantage to advantage, from being a victim to a hero, from a deficit to plenty, to withholding to offering, from looking within to looking inwards and outwards, and micro and macro. And it is with this change of mindset, we are able to empower and seek collaboration with other sectors to contribute to the well-being of the entire community. As an asset and intrinsic segment of the community, the stewardship is not only the primary responsibility of the craft sector, but now it needs to include the whole community. Specific to the craft sector, in the context of 2021, I think these are the areas which craft sector needs to look at in terms of craft data and statistics, incorporation of the principles of circular economy, development of craft, branding and marketing strategies, which I think you'll be having a webinar session next week. Activities to encourage and promote youth engagement, and exploring the themes of the digital so that craft can be promoted virtually. So finally, it is essential to have a central authority that's impartial to implement and coordinate all this work. So I think I've come to the end of my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Loh. Joseph, for the people who joined late, Joseph is from Scotland, and but right now he is in Singapore and he's in quarantine. And for 6 days he's in the hotel. He is visiting Singapore, but Singapore is now is 14 days quarantine. He's in the 6 days. So thank you for your wonderful presentation. Just few points I must mention here. Firstly, you talked about the I mean, if the children are doing something else, education, and then professionals, then how it will. In India, we have seen that it is the village which is treated as a unit. So every village has 60 to 100 craftsmen or folk performing artists. So it is need not be that always the artist's son and daughter will take it up. Rather, it's the neighborhood. So that's why we insisted on the geographical identification, that's the indication, the GI, on the locational basis, on the village basis. So it's the artist, village, and the art. That's how we promote it. So that's one important. Secondly, we have seen when the Madhubani painters or even our Chau artists or even the Kantha artists, whoever daughter or son gets educated, the first graduate came from Purulia Chau. And when they get educated, many of them actually continue their tradition. So that's another very important thing. So, you know, why people used to leave it? People leave it when that doesn't bring you the socio-economic gain or recognition. But when you get both, then nobody will leave it. So that's very important. And coming to the corona, post-COVID, because COVID has also given us a brilliant opportunity to re-engineer the whole system. And wherever there are additional flesh, we can cut that and we can take that a proper route. And what we have interestingly noticed, and we have faced this, we work with over 30,000 artists in Bengal and rural artists, and we are all mostly in the field. So what we have noticed here that March end, it was announced, our lockdown was really a terrible lockdown, real sense lockdown. And April, May, we had a very difficult time. Even the artists faced a very, very difficult time. July, August onwards, it started opening up. Although the fear of uncertainty was there too much, that, you know, what will happen next? From August, September, we could connect them to retails again. And the festivals play a very important role. We had Durga Puja, the big cultural thing in Calcutta and in Bengal. So that is more, that's the festive season starts. And so preparation for Durga Puja also connected the artists for the festival thing. So that's important. The e-commerce linkage helped. That's, again, I'm bringing that perspective. But slowly, we've seen that despair to survival happened around July, August. September onwards, I will say survival to revival, that connection started. And with this Ripples Festival, I'm seeing that revival is happening good way for the handicraft artists, very good way. And maybe if this is the progress that we look for, we can see, then maybe I hope by April, we can again hope for revival to growth for them. But for the folk performing artists, the journey will be a little more tougher. That's what my guesstimate is. Okay, now we will go to Shola, because you talked about so many crafts. Let us hear from the craftsman himself. Kamal Malakar, a very well-known artist, have joined us from Shurul, and my colleague Rai is there with him. And Kamal Babu, নমস্কার।
নমস্কার, বলুন।
হ্যাঁ, কেমন আছেন?
একদম ভালো।
গুড গুড। আচ্ছা, কমল বাবু, আমাদের এই শোলা সম্পর্কে আপনার এই করোনা পিরিয়ডের আগে এবং পরে ব্যবসার কি অবস্থা, শিল্পীদের কি অবস্থা এবং আপনার কাজ, এগুলো সম্পর্কে যদি আমাদেরকে একটু অবহিত করেন।
হ্যাঁ, করোনার এই অবস্থায় তো একটু ডাউন হয়েছে, কিন্তু আমাদের যে ট্র্যাডিশনাল কাজ, এই ট্র্যাডিশনাল কাজের মধ্যে যে মোরফুল, যে বিয়ের মুকুট, চাঁদমালা, এনা নানান রকম হতো, তো তার থেকে আমি একটু তো সরে এসেছি। কারণ কলা ভবন করে বেরিয়ে এসে তারপর আমি কি করছি, এই তো শোলা দেখছেন, এই শোলাকে আমি এইভাবে জয়েন্ট করে তারপর আপনার এর উপরে ড্রয়িংটা করে এই যে এখন রথের যে ঘোড়া, এগুলো করছি। এগুলো এইসব জিনিস করছি, দেখতে পাচ্ছেন। ঘোড়াটা কাটছি এইভাবে কাটছি, পরপর এসে যাচ্ছি, তারপরে এগুলোকে অ্যাসেম্বল করে আলাদা করে কেটে অ্যাসেম্বল করে দিচ্ছি, দিয়ে এটা তো এখানে থাকবে, কিন্তু এর আগে যেসব জিনিস আমি যেগুলো আমার দ্বারা নানান রকম ছোট ছোট এই যে জিনিস এইগুলোর ডিমান্ড কিন্তু দেশ বিদেশে খুব বেশি রয়েছে এবং খুব ভালোই চলছিল। কারণ আমার সঙ্গে ছেলে জয়েন করেছে কাঞ্চন মালাকা, ও ডিজাইন করে পাস করে তারপর আমার সঙ্গে জয়েন করেছে, তার ফলে ভালোই চলছিল। কিন্তু করোনা আবহে অনেকটা ডাউন হয়ে গেছে এবং ফলে কি হয়েছে, ফলে আমাদের এখন যেটা খুবই দরকার, যেটা আপনারা এই যে একটা বড় কাজ আপনারা ব্রিটিশ কাউন্সিলের দ্বারা করছেন, হ্যাঁ, এটার দ্বারা আমাদের মনে হয় আরো বেশি করে মানুষ জানতে পারবে এবং আমরা আরো বড় করে উপকৃত হয়ে যাব। এবং আসছেন, অনেকেই আসছেন, ফোন করছেন, জানাচ্ছেন, হ্যাঁ, এখন এই অবস্থায় রয়েছে।
Good. So let me just quickly, maybe Rai, do you want to translate him a little? Yeah.
What he was telling that before the COVID period, everything was progressing very well as he was teaching the new generation and everyone was coming to see his work here. But after the COVID hit, he had a little setback. But now again he is reviving, and through these festivals and displays, he is again regaining his position in the field.
হ্যাঁ, কমল বাবু, আপনার কি আশা যে নেক্সট পুরো এই সোলার আপনার যে বিজনেস যে রেঞ্জ ছিল সেটাকে নরমাল গ্রোথে আনতে কিরকম টাইম লাগবে বলে আপনার এক্সপেকটেশন?
এর কি বলবো এখানটায়,
আন্দাজ এক বছর?
হ্যাঁ, এরকম তো মনে হচ্ছে।
আর আরেকটা জিনিস আমি জানতে চাইবো, আমরা আপনার এবং আমাদের জীবদ্দশায় আমরা কখনো মহামারী দেখিনি, কিন্তু শুনেছি, কিন্তু দেখিনি। কিন্তু আমি যে আমার প্রশ্ন হচ্ছে যে আগামী প্রজন্মের জন্য, মানে আপনার ছেলের কাঞ্চনের নাতির জন্য আপনার কি উপদেশ হবে, যে কি করা দরকার যাতে এরকম বিপদ আমাদের না আসে?
এটার জন্য বলবো যে মানুষ নিজের দেহকে এখন সঠিকভাবে বাঁচানোর প্রয়োজন রয়েছে। তার জন্য দরকার নিজের পরিষ্কার পরিচ্ছন্নতা, এবং যেটা আমরা সকাল থেকে রাত পর্যন্ত করে থাকি, ধ্যান, যোগ, কর্মধারা, কর্মযোগের মধ্যেই ডুবে থাকা, এবং তাদের এইভাবে যদি পরিষ্কার পরিচ্ছন্নতার মধ্য দিয়ে চলা যায় তাহলে কিন্তু দেহকে বাঁচানো যাবে। এবং এই মহামারীকে আমি যা নিজে অনুভব করছি, যে এখন যেটা হচ্ছে সেটা যে দেহ বাঁচানো, নিজের দেহকে সঠিকভাবে বাঁচিয়ে চলা, এবং এটা ছেলেও করছে এবং সকলকেই আমরা, আমার যারা কাছে কাজ শিখে বা শিখতে আসছে, যতটা পারছি মানুষকে কথাই বলছি যে এই দেহকে যাতে সঠিকভাবে বাঁচানো যায়।
Very nice. Yes, Rai, a little bit. Yeah, the essence of it.
Yeah. He is expecting that it will take 1 year to revive to his original position, and he pleads all of us and the next generation to come that please plan properly so that this kind of pandemic never hits you the way it hit today.
Very good. ওকে, কমল বাবু, আপনার আমাদের জন্য আর কোনো কিছু, আপনি কোনো কিছু বলতে চান, কোনো কিছু দেখতে চান? সারা পৃথিবী আপনাকে দেখছে, সুতরাং এনিথিং দ্যাট ইউ ওয়ান্ট টু সে?
হ্যাঁ, তো যেসব কাজগুলো আমি করছি সেগুলো ধরুন, এইটাতে আমি আমার জীবনে পড়াশুনো করেছি বিক্রি করে, হ্যাঁ, তারপর তো ধরুন যেমন এই যে ফুলের কাজ, এইগুলো বাইরেও।
কমল বাবু, আপনার এই সামনের বড় কাজটা যদি একটু সামনে থেকে তুলে ধরেন।
হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ হ্যাঁ, এটা 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 এই করোনা কালে আমারই যারা কাজ কেনেন করেন, তারাই আমাকে এটা অর্ডার দিয়েছেন যে এই সময়ে আপনি যদি এই কাজটা আমাকে করে দেন। আর এটা কিন্তু সময় লাগছে, এখনো কমপ্লিট হয়নি, এখনো মোটামুটি 1 মাস সময় লাগবে।
কমল বাবু, এটা করতে পুরো কত সময় লাগে?
2.5 থেকে 3 মাস যদি কন্টিনিউস করে যায়।
আর এটার দাম কিরকম?
এটা ওনারা আমাকে 20,000-এর মধ্যে করতে বলেছেন।
আচ্ছা,
তো যদিও আমি সময়ও চেয়েছি এবং ওনাদেরকে বলেছি যে এটা এদিক ওদিক হতে পারে কিছুটা মূল্যায়ন।
রাইট,
যেমন আরো যে সমস্ত কাজ সেগুলো হচ্ছে দেখুন এখানে যেমন আপনি ছোট ছোট বাউল দেখছেন, এই যে তিরুপতি দেখছেন, একটু দুর্গাটা যদি দেখান হ্যাঁ তাহলে খুব ভালো হয়। কারণ এইসব কাজগুলো তো আপনার একটু দামি এবং যে ছোট ছোট এই যে কাজগুলো, এই কাজগুলো কিন্তু ডিমান্ড খুব। আমার জার্মানিতেও তারা এক্সপোর্ট প্রমোশন কাউন্সিল আমাকে এ করেছিল, কিন্তু আমার স্কিল না থাকার জন্য আমি যেতে, তারা চাইছেন 1 কন্টেনার 1 মাসে, সেটা সম্ভব নয় না থাকার জন্য।
হ্যাঁ, তিরুপতিতে একটু দেখান। হ্যাঁ, বাহ, দুর্গা,
এটা 3 মাস সময় লাগে।
এটার দাম কিরকম?
হ্যাঁ, এটা আপনার ওই এখন এ পর্যন্ত 35,000 মতো পেয়েছি।
বাহ, ওয়ান্ডারফুল, ওয়ান্ডারফুল।
দেখা যাচ্ছে?
হ্যাঁ, দেখা যাচ্ছে, দেখা যাচ্ছে। ওয়ান্ডারফুল, ওয়ান্ডারফুল। ওকে, কমল বাবু, আজকে হ্যাঁ তিরুপতিটা দেখিয়ে দিন, আমরা তারপরে আমাদের আবার অন্য জায়গায় যেতে হবে। হ্যাঁ,
আমি একটা ফুল দেখাচ্ছি। আমি এই মুহূর্তে খুব ইচ্ছা যে কত সুন্দর সুন্দর জিনিস হয়, যদিও আমার তো
Kamal was explaining, আপনি করুন, আপনি করুন. Kamal was explaining that that Durga takes, and now he is showing how to make the flowers using sholas. So that you can see.
আমার ওয়াইফ খুব সুন্দর বানায় এটা।
Kamal's wife makes it beautifully also. So this flowers is his signature thing. That's his passion. But although he makes beautiful products like the temples and the Durga that you've seen, which average takes about 3 months and average selling price about 35,000. And that খুব সুন্দর কমল বাবু, ধন্যবাদ আপনাকে, নমস্কার। আমরা এবারে চলে যাব আমাদের পরের কাছে, but as people said, ধন্যবাদ Rai and Kamal babu, thank you. So from Shurul, as he talked about Deho, that is the human being's body, and who knows better than Baul about the body, because that's the best thing that they always talk about, the philosophy that is Deho Tattva, means the world is all about human being and of the human body. So Baul's believe that God lies in the human itself. It doesn't lie in the mosque or church or temple. And celebration of humanity is the essence of Baul music. We have Lakhon Das Baul sitting at Joydev Kenduli. Lakhon, namaskar.
নমস্কার, জয় গুরু, জয় গুরু।
জয় গুরু, জয় গুরু, কেমন আছো?
খুব ভালো আছি, আপনারা সবাই
ছায়া
ভালো
কেমন
আছেন?
আছো?
ভালো আছি।
বাহ, আর তোমার পুত্রকেও দেখতে পাচ্ছি, তোমার নাম কি?
সমীরণ।
সমীরণ, কি খবর?
ভালো।
Wow. And that's my colleague Arpan. So here Lakhon's wife Chaya and Shomiran, their son. So Lakhon, এতক্ষণ আমাদের কমল বলছিলেন যে আমি জিজ্ঞেস করেছিলাম ওনাকে যে এই ধরো সমীরণের নাতিকে তুমি কি বলে যাবে, কারণ মহামারী তো আমরা জীবনে দেখিনি, শুনিও নি, আর এই প্রথম বিপদে পড়লাম, নিজেরা দেখে গেলাম, তাহলে কি প্রোটেকশন নেওয়া উচিত? তাতে কমল বললেন যে নিজের দেহ, ভাবলাম দেহ যদি থাকে তাহলে তো প্রথমেই লক্ষণের কাছে যাই। তা লক্ষণ, প্রথমেই আমাদের যদি একটা ছোট্ট গান শুনিয়ে তুমি আজকে আমাদের একটা জয়দেব থেকে বা তোমার একটু সম্পর্কে কথা বলে, এবং এই করোনা পিরিয়ডের আগে পরে কি অবস্থা, কেমন লাগছে, সবকিছু নিয়েই আমি তোমার কাছে শুনতে চাইবো, গানও শুনতে চাইবো। ওভার টু ইউ।
ঠিক আছে, আমি আগে কথাটা বলে নিই আর কি।
নিশ্চয়ই।
দেহ তো সুস্থ রাখতেই হবে, দেহ সুস্থ না রাখলে কিচ্ছুই হবে না। হ্যাঁ, পুরো কর্মই করতে পারবো না দেহ যদি ঠিক না থাকে। তবে আমার মনে হয় সব থেকে যেটা বেশি প্রয়োজন সেটা হলো মানুষে মিলেমিশে থাকাটা। হ্যাঁ, প্রত্যেক মানুষের সাথে যদি মেলামেশা করে থাকতে পারি, ভাব ভালোবাসা থাকে, যতই দুর্যোগ আসুক, যতই মহামারী আসুক, কিচ্ছু করতে পারবে না।
Very
জয়
nice.
গুরু।
Jai Guru, Jai Guru, Jai Guru. So Lakhon very nicely placed that it's not really distancing from people, but it is rather reducing the distance is the essence of celebration of humanity. So that's a wonderful way of beginning the Baul music in this. Yes, Lakhon.
আমি একখানি গুরুতত্ত্ব গান শোনাচ্ছি।
Guru Tattva. Just for the listeners, he will be singing a Guru Tattva song. Guru Tattva is basically Guru, the master, is the pillar of Baul music. And Bauls believe that one has to unconditionally surrender to the Guru. So Guru and disciples have a very special relationship because we all learn from the Gurus. So Lakhon will be singing one song, which is on the Guru Tattva, that is the genre.
আমি যে গানটি গাইছি, গানটি হাওড়ে গোসাইয়ের লেখা। গুরু ভক্তি আছে যার, ভবে হয়েছে সে পার।
বাহ, করো।
গুরু ভক্তি বলো বানে থাকে সচেতনে, তারে কি সমনে নিতে পারে আর, হবে হয়েছে সে পার। গুরু ভক্তি আছে যার, হবে হয়েছে সে পার। হবে হয়েছে সে পার। যে গুরু সেই কৃষ্ণ অভেদ তত্ত্ব জ্ঞানে, সেবা সুখে মগ্ন থাকো নিশি দিনে, হয় ভক্তি বিশ্বাসে। রয়েছে সদানন্দ মনে, স্বভাবে আলিঙ্গনে, রয়েছে সদানন্দ মনে, স্বভাব আলিঙ্গনে, লক্ষ্মণাগে দর্পণে প্রেমের সন্ধ্যা, ওরে মন মোরের দর্পণে প্রেমের সন্ধ্যা, হবে হয়েছে সে পার। হবে সব দেখে গুরুতে সব দেখে ও সে গুরুতে সব দেখে ও সে গুরুতে সব দেখে গুরুতে সব দেখে মহাভাবে তাকে দেখে মহাভাবে তাকে দেখে তবে নিষ্ঠা হতে হয় আসক্তি প্রচুর তবে তো হইবে প্রেমেরই অঙ্কুর এই দেহেতে নিষ্ঠা হতে হয় আসক্তি প্রচুর তবে তো হইবে প্রেমেরই অঙ্কুর এই দেহেতে গোসাই প্রহ্লাদ চাঁদ বলে সন্ধ্যার বাতি জেলে প্রহ্লাদ চাঁদ বলে সন্ধ্যার বাতি জেলে প্রভাত কালে দিলে হাউরে তবে
Jai Guru, Jai Guru. Dhanyabad Lakhon for entire audience and also for my the co-panelists, the panelists Joseph and Simon. Simon, welcome. I know that you were there, but at the beginning we missed you. But again, we will bring in. Let me just quickly say, the first baul is referred as Sudhir Das Baul in Joydev Kenduli, and Sudhir Das Baul is a very famous guru, and he had two disciples, many disciples, but two important one is Tarok Khapa, another is Lakhon Das Baul. You know, Tarok is no more with us, but Lakhon actually shifted from his residence to this Sudhir Baba's ashram, and so he is the real disciple of Sudhir Das Baul, and he moved from his place to Sudhir Baba's place, and Sudhir's wife also stayed, that is we call Guruma. So she expired just few days back, and even I was there on that after that. And then Lakhon has been maintaining this. So this is originally Sudhir Baba's ashram, and now Lakhon Das Baul's ashram. And Lakhon has sung a wonderful number on Guru Tattva, respecting the Guru. And Shomiran is also there at the same time, Chaya, his wife. And Lakhon, আমরা খুব খুশি যে আমাদের সঙ্গে পৃথিবী বিখ্যাত মিউজিক ক্রিটিক Simon Broughton join করেছেন. Simon, welcome. And Simon has visited Joydev Kenduli also. Simon, do you like to ask him any question right now?
Because now it would have been the Kenduli Mela, is that right?
Kenduli Mela just was held on 14th and 15th, but in a much shorter way. It's basically because the government could not allow the thing. So I was there on the 16th and 17th. And
was he giving public performances though during the Mela? Or was that not?
Yeah, actually Joydev Kenduli has 3-4 permanent ashrams. One of them is Lakhon's, another is Sadhu Kangal, another is Moner Manush, which is Sadhun Das Maul. Other ashrams get activated mostly during festivals. And this time, all the ashrams and akhras were open, but the temporary stalls were not allowed, and the visitors doing the rituals were restricted. And but the Baul music lovers, they could have gone, they have gone. So for the first day is the snan, is basically when people take bath in the Ajoy river, and the second day evening onwards, but this time they didn't allow microphone till 1.5 days. So it's a small gathering. So many people say that we went back 20 years back to Joydev Delhi. And but on the last day, there were so much of microphone, it seems, even the people also visited, that finally police had to again come in and stop that also. I reached there on 16th, and 16th it was all good. So yes, the Mela took place, but not in the current form of Mela.
And Lachan's performances, were they there in the ashram, or was he in somewhere more public?
In ashram.
Okay, yeah.
Everybody's performance was restricted to the ashram.
Yes, understood.
Okay. লক্ষণ, তুমি আমাদের এই করোনা পিরিয়ডের পরে যে তোমার কিরকম ভাবে ব্যবসা, মানে গানের তো অনেক কমেছে, তুমি কোনো লাস্ট পারফরমেন্স কবে করলে এবং আগামী দিনে কবে আবার পারফরমেন্স, আর এখন কিরকম লোকজন আসছে তোমার কাছে, এটা যদি একটু বলো।
আমি করোনার লকডাউনের পরে প্রোগ্রাম সেরকম করি, ওটা 3টে প্রোগ্রাম করেছি আর কি।
Lokkon did only about 3 programs in the entire lockdown period.
তার মধ্যে একটা টিভি প্রোগ্রাম ছিল,
One of them was TV.
আর তারপরে banglanatod.com এর করছি প্রোগ্রাম। এটা আমাদের খুবই উপকারে আসছে আর কি। হ্যাঁ, আপনাদের ধন্যবাদ।
And then we have been doing this weekend festival, so which is helping him to get the performances.
এখন আপাতত কোনো প্রোগ্রাম নেই, এবার প্রোগ্রামে খুব চলছে আর কি, জানি না কখন হবে আর কি। ঠিক আছে, সব সাই ভরসা, গুরু ভরসা।
Because overall, what he mentioned is that, it's true that, everybody has a lack of performance. Programs are very, very few. So it is very difficult time because, I must mention, when lockdown happened in Bengal, or rather in India, that time the handicraft market, you have to remember, till March we have the handicraft season because the tourism people come in. The tourism ends before Holi, which is 5th, 6th March last year. So, but Corona happened after that. So our handicraft artists did not really suffer the last year's market. But the Bauls and Chows, their main market time is the summer, which got collapsed completely. So they were really suffered big time. And that market did not open up at all even now. So a festival like Ripple Festival, where we are encouraging visitors to go to the places, rather, because the people can't come out because there are hardly festivals going on. So that is actually catching up for the last 2-3 weeks. And Ripple's weekends are very, very active. And if Ripple's is definitely a big power to this entire effort. So, Dhanyabad Lokkon. Simon, do you have anything to ask? Or Joseph, do you want to ask anything to Lokkon? He's a very, very senior Baul, very senior Baul. Okay. Okay, if right now there is no question, so ধন্যবাদ লক্ষণ, তোমার কোনো কিছু বলার আছে?
আমার বলার আছে, আপনি যে রিপল ফেস্টিভ্যাল চলছে, হ্যাঁ, এটা খুবই ভালো লাগছে আর কি।
ভেরি গুড। তোমার
ভালো লাগছে, আমি চাইছি এইভাবে আপনারা আমাদের পাশে থাকুন। হ্যাঁ, মানুষের সেবা করছেন আপনারা, অশেষ ধন্যবাদ দিয়ে ছোট করবো না, প্রণাম। আমাদের বিশেষ করে আমাদের যে শিল্পী, বাউল শিল্পী, আমাদের জয়দেব, এই জয়দেবের কথা সারা বিশ্বে ছড়িয়ে পড়ছে। হ্যাঁ, জয়দেবকে ওনারা আসছেন, প্রচুর মানুষ আসছে আর কি, তার জন্য আমরা খুবই উপকৃত।
ধন্যবাদ, ধন্যবাদ। শীঘ্রই দেখা হবে। So we will let Lakhon go now, and right now we have Simon with us. So the next we will go to Simon Broughton. Simon is a journalist, filmmaker who has been involved in world music for quite some time, 30 years, and he is also the editor-in-chief in Songlines, and one of the fantastic music reviewers, music critic, and a person who visits all the places. I know it's written South Asia, but actually once me and Simon, we were talking that, you know, Simon, which country you likes most? And he said Hungary. And how many times you have visited? Let's hear Simon, how many times you have visited Hungary?
Well, I haven't counted, but it's probably like 50 times, probably.
How many times you come to India?
In India's probably 12 times, I would
12
guess.
times. And out of 12 times,
It's never enough. It's never enough.
that's true. That's true. And
I can say I know Hungary quite well, but I can't say I know India quite well.
that's true. That's true. So wonderful. Simon, as you know, we are discussing heritage and resilience. And you have been following the entire performing artist all over the world. We would like to take a little brief from you, sharing your experience on the overall performing art, on the music from the global point of view, referring to today's topic and the Ripples Festival. Over to you, Simon.
Yes, so playing with the pandemic, I think everyone's agreed that it's been a horrendous year for music and the performing arts. I mean, we just heard there Lakhon saying he'd done 3 performances through the whole, since the beginning of the pandemic. It's probably hit the hospitality industry worst, bars, restaurants, hotels, but music doesn't follow very far behind. All musicians have stories of cancelled tours and gigs and everything going on hold. And of course, performances, as we've seen today, going digital. I thought the statistics yesterday from Jonathan Kennedy were pretty alarming about the impact of the pandemic in India. This picture is from the St. Nicholas Festival in Poland in December, another country I love very much. And this is the Polish group Sutari. A live concert on stage, but of course no audience. And I think musicians are sadly having to get used to ending a song with an uncomfortable silence where the applause should be. But before we look at the pros and cons of virtual performance and the inventive ideas that some people have come up with, I want to just look briefly at the wider music industry. This picture is Grammy-winning Dua Lipa, a huge pop star in Britain and the US, but actually from a Kosovo Albanian family. Interestingly, before the virus hit, music industry professionals were saying things were really bouncing back. At the end of 2019, the recording industry was recovering at an average rate of 8%, its 5th consecutive year of growth. This is still beneath the sort of boom period of CDs in 1999, but the revenues were back to the levels of 2004, globally worth $20 billion each year. Live ticket sales grossed $22 billion in 2019, which is the highest ever level. So that was before the COVID hit from Wuhan. But it can be argued that perhaps COVID has even encouraged the growth in subscription music services. So in September 2020, last September, 400 million people were paying for a subscription for streamed music. That's the highest ever, of course, and 100 million more than in 2019. And lockdown certainly strengthened demand. And I think when we come out of the pandemic, people will be all the more hungry for live music, for sure. And historians have pointed out that we had the swinging 20s after World War I and the Spanish flu. So maybe a century later, we can have the swinging 20s again after this pandemic. So 2020 has been the year of digital concerts. And one that really grabbed the headlines was by Dua Lipa, who we were just looking at on November the 22nd, which apparently had 5 million paying viewers. There were 1.9 logins from China, 95,000 from India, and over 250,000 tickets sold on various ticketing platforms. Dua Lipa had numerous guest stars, including Kylie Minogue, Miley Cyrus, and even Elton John. I didn't see the concert, but interestingly, the reviews weren't wholly positive. The Guardian review ended, if it were all happening on an arena stage and you were watching it amidst a vast crowd of screaming fans, it would be fantastic. But it isn't. The quest for something that goes some way towards replicating a live experience goes on. But Dua Lipa isn't what we're here to talk about. Another perhaps more interesting, spectacular success was the British folk band Bellowhead. They were a very successful big band, about a dozen people, who play traditional English folk songs, and they disbanded about 3 or 4 years ago, but reunited for a one-off pay-per-view concert on December the 5th. They sold about 9,000 tickets at around £15 each. So after the production and filming costs, that was probably close to £100,000 that they made out of that. And that's much more than they would have got for a regular live concert. But obviously cases like this are really exceptions. Much more typical is someone like Derek Gripper. Derek is a great classical guitarist from South Africa, who also plays West African and Indian music. In fact, he has played in Kolkata in Debashish Bhattacharya's festival. That was just a few years ago. And I very much enjoyed a lockdown pay-per-view concert that he did from his home in Cape Town. This is a picture of it here. What I find, there's something really quite intimate about these sort of lockdown concerts. Obviously, it's just him on his own, but it's rather wonderful seeing somebody at home. And I found myself sort of looking at all these books on the bookshelf and looking which titles I could read and what was there. And he's signed up to an organization called Patreon. And this is a sort of platform that's designed to help musicians earn an income from their music. And he both gives concerts on a fairly regular basis, and obviously giving lessons online. These are ways that it's obviously possible for musicians, even during these circumstances, to keep earning some sort of living. Now, of course, here we go. Of course, an online concert is not the same as hearing the music live, but with a couple of locked off cameras and one performer, it is a really nice, intimate experience. And the other thing that I think is a positive thing about these concerts is, of course, you can send messages, you know, as is possible during this sort of Zoom call. We can send messages, he can respond, he can answer questions, and this sort of two-way contact is very nice, and something, of course, that doesn't normally happen in a regular concert. There've been concerts, of course, from all around the world. So while travel has been impossible, I've at least been able to go to India like this virtually and see performances from West Bengal or here from Rajasthan. This is Anwar Khan Manganyar, and that's thanks to Bangla Natak, of course. Also, I was in Indonesia, where I attended a whole week-long festival in Bali. I wasn't there in person, of course, but online. And there's a lot to be said for live streaming. And I think even when we get back to a normal situation, it's something that will probably continue in some way. There was an interview recently with one of the UK sort of professionals saying ticketed live streaming is here to stay. Obviously, nobody's suggesting real live concerts will be replaced by technology. It's complementary, but there are plenty of benefits in watching shows in the comfort of your own home. Ticketed live streaming is the future, or I should say it's part of the future. This is a guy called Martin Mills who said this just recently, part of an concert organization here called Beggars. In fact, this last year, Womex, which is the big world music industry showcase event, happened in Budapest, but it was also hybrid with all the delegates and the showcases online, but streamed concerts from the Hungarian performers in Budapest. And it was certainly good to see some musicians on stage. This was Monica Lakatos, who's also been part of Bangla Natak concerts. And she, I'm pleased to say, won a Womex award this year, and this was the concert she gave when she won the award at the end of the Womex event. But then there are also filmed showcases, and it was great to see, for instance, a band from Malawi in East Africa doing a showcase on the streets of Lilongwe, the capital. Which brings us, of course, to Ripple's festival, also a hybrid event with live events there in Joydev, and the rest of us, of course, here online. So I'm sure online performance is with us to stay in some ways, but I have to say, I think probably like us all, we miss the real thing, and I hope it won't be too long before I myself can go back to Joydev and see wonderful musicians like Sadhu and Kangal Kyapa, who I saw, well, it was 2 years ago now that we were there. So anyway, that's my little reflection on this past year of online performances, and I do think it's something that will have a lasting impact. Although I think we're all ready now for the real thing, and let's hope that we get back to that as soon as possible. But I have to say, thank you very much to people like Bangla Natak for reaching out and sending these digital performances around the world. It's been wonderful being able to keep these connections and links going.
Thank you, Simon. for sharing the global picture as well as coming to the Joydeep Kenduli. I think the last photo was wonderful because that's one of the major venues of, as well as you all know. I mean, let me tell you that maybe Simon knows, but for others, many of you who may not know, is that Baul is considered to be the soul of Bengal, the Baul music. And Shantiniketan, Bolpur, that entire area is also taken as the soul of Bengal's cultural space. So when somebody shows the photo of Joydeep Kenduli or Shantiniketan, it's basically, we are talking about the culture of the red soil part of Bengal. In Bengali, we call it Rar Bangla. And that's very, very strong component of our culture. So that's really wonderful. Thank you, Dr. Joseph Lowe and Simon Lokhon Komal for wonderful. If you all agree, in that case, I would like to request anyone, if they have any question from the audience, Karor jodi kono proshno thake for any one of the speakers, you may please write down, or if anyone has any question to ask to Simon or Joseph, or maybe how they will do it. They will raise their hand here. I can see June is there. June works at June. Do you want to say something, June Teberov?
Hello, everyone. Do you hear me now?
Hi.
Hi. I'll put my camera.
Yes.
Really, I mean, what I would like, I don't know if you can see me now. What I'd like to say is thank you for this Ripple Festival that I think has been just excellent. You've chosen such informed speakers, and it was a wonderful combination to have the performers as well. I think so many issues have been raised. I think Joseph Lowe's presentation was very interesting to think about things at a community level, which then you amplified, and thinking about how in India the village is a critical component in the whole system. In other countries, it's more dispersed, where craftspeople may be a very small percentage of a population or very geographically dispersed. So it'd be interesting to think about how some of the learning from the Indian experience could be shared in other contexts. I think it's always a question about how you scale up. We have many examples of extremely good small scale projects, but then how do you either replicate or scale them up? I think Joseph Lowe's comment about having some kind of structure, some kind of governance structure, and we talked about that yesterday. You know, in a place like Singapore, that's easy because everything's very centralized, but that's not the case in a federal system, where in India, where the states are so important, and in Europe also, where you have different systems of government. But I think, in places where you do have a craft council or some kind of creative industries federation, that can be very effective. And I think one of the main points is having a voice for the sector. And there's good evidence of that in the UK, where you have the Creative Industries Federation on one side, and we have Heritage Alliance, and they have become the voice of the sector and really engage with government and make known what can the sector contribute, which was Joseph's very good point, as well as what are the needs and how they can work with government. So I think those are good examples. I'm quite impressed actually with the Creative Industries Federation. They're, because it also brings together the private sector, the voluntary sector, and government. So those are some of the things. And the last Simon's presentation, I think, was also fascinating. I mean, this huge challenges for performing artists. I think the performing artists are the hardest hit, and those that have been able to use social media and use the social media and the internet for performances obviously are in a better position, but the live performance is still lacking. So I guess it's just a matter of time until that can resume, and we have to think about some creative ways to bridge that gap and give support, really strategic to support, like Bangla Natak is doing and other organizations. So I guess that's it. I'm very happy to answer any questions from people. You have my email address, and thanks so much. It's been really inspiring and lovely to see you all. Thank you.
Thank you, June.
Thanks.
So as we see that, there is not much of question from anyone, may I, with Simon's and Joseph's permission, can we request Lokhon for one small song? Do you think that's fine? Simon?
I'd very much like that. I sent a message in the chat to say perhaps we could end with Lakhon doing a final.
Then let's do one thing. Lokhon, তুমি যদি একটা ছোট্ট গান করতে পারো 4-5 মিনিটের মধ্যে একটা ছোট্ট গান।
ঠিক আছে। আমি এবার যে গানটি গাইছি, এই গানটি আমাদের জয়দেবেরই একজন সাধক পুরুষ ছিলেন, নাগা বাবা, আনন্দগিরি, ওনার লেখা গান এবং আমার সুরে গাইছি গান। আমার ভাঙা তরি চলে আপন তালে গো সাইজি, ভাঙা তরি চলে আপন তালে, আমার ভাঙা তরি চলে আপন তালে গো সাইজি, ভাঙা তরি চলে আপন তালে। 6 জনাতে হাল ধরেছে গুরু গো, আরে 6 জনাতে হাল ধরেছে ওই বাতাসের পানে বসাই, ভাঙা তরি চলে আমার ভাঙা তরি চলে আপন তালে বসাই, ভাঙা তরি চলে আপন তালে। নিরুপায়ে বসে আছি আমার পড়ে গেছে লগি কাছি, নিরুপায়ে বসে আছি আমার পড়ে গেছে লগি কাছি, শুধু ঢেউয়ের তালে নাচছে তরি, ঢেউয়ের তালে নাচছে তরি, কেউ নাই আর হালে বসাই, ভাঙা তরি চলে ভাঙা তরি চলে কাকা কয় ওহে হরি তুমি একবারে সে হও কান্নারি গুরু গো কাকা কই ওহে হরি তুমি একবারে সে হও কান্নারি নইলে এবার ডুবে মরি নইলে এবার ডুবে মরি ওই ছয় জনার ওই চালে বসাই ভাঙা তরি চলে আমার চলে আপন চালে বসাই ভাঙা তরি চলে আমার ভাঙা তরি ভাঙা তরি ভাঙা তরি ভাঙা তরি চলে
ধন্যবাদ লক্ষণ, ধন্যবাদ. You know, Bowls always use different, although he sang this on the Guru Tattva, but at the same time, this interesting that Bowls often use this words tori, that is basically boat. So boat, then many things like that. These are metaphors. So boat is, one way is also your life because, you know, it goes on. So this is written by Naga Baba, a very well-known baul from Joydev, and he has done the tuned by Lakhon himself. So ধন্যবাদ লক্ষণ, অপূর্ব. তোমার এই আমাদের পুরো জিনিসটা কেমন লাগলো সেটা যদি 1 মিনিট একটা শেষের কমেন্ট করো, কারণ আমরা ওয়েবিনারের একদম শেষের দিকে।
রিপেলস ফেস্টিভ্যালটা আমার তো খুবই মনোমুগ্ধ করেছে। আপনাদের মতো মানুষের সঙ্গ পেয়েছি। আমাদের ব্রিটিশ কাউন্সিলর ওনারাও এসছেন, জয়দেব, আমাদের জয়দেবকে দেখেছেন, আমাদের আশ্রম দেখেছেন, এতে আমরা খুবই ধন্য। আশা করছি এইভাবে আপনারা আমাদের পাশে থাকবেন। জয় গুরু।
Jai Guru. I actually asked him what's his take on this because a concluding remark, and he mentioned that he's really very happy about the fact that everybody is coming in, and he also thanks British Council because yesterday their Eastern, the Director East and Northeast, Debanjan Chakraborty, visited there along with Paramita. So they all visited his ashram. So he's very, very happy. And even I had the opportunity of visiting him yesterday. And you know, because 14th and 15th was the Mela, Joydev Mela, 16th usually people go out in the morning. But and that time Bowls have a beautiful thing called Milan. Milan means togetherness, celebrating togetherness. And they sing song and there is a small ritual also around that. But the day you do Milan, he will not sing. Baul will not sing that day anymore. So that's why he did not do the Milan in the morning. He rather waited when we all went. After that, when we were leaving, he did the Milan in the afternoon. So we were also party to the Milan. So that was also wonderful, witnessing the Milan at Joydev Kenduli as part of the Joydev Kenduli Mela at none other than Lakhon Das Baul's ashram, which is Sudhir Baba's ashram. So that was really a fantastic experience. Dhanyabad Lakhon. আমরা এখন so we really thank British Council for supporting us in this Ripples Festival. We thank Jonathan also. Jonathan joined us every day at the webinar, and Debanjan who visited for 2 days all the sites along with Paramita and all the other British Council colleagues who were party to designing an entire thing. I also take this opportunity to thank all my colleagues who are there at the field as well as sitting here at the backdrop. And the next I go to Kamal. Kamal Babu.
বলুন বলুন
হ্যাঁ, আপনার এই ওভারঅল ওয়েবিনার এবং এই রিপলস ফেস্টিভ্যাল নিয়ে একটা শেষের কমেন্ট যদি একটা 1 মিনিটের দেন।
হ্যাঁ, এই যে আজ ব্রিটিশ কাউন্সিল বা যারা আমাদের সঙ্গে পার্টিসিপেট করলেন, আমরা তাদেরকে তো অসংখ্য ধন্যবাদ জানাই এবং ঠাকুর রামকৃষ্ণের কথা দিয়ে বলি যে তিনি বলেছেন যে মানুষের উদ্দেশ্য হচ্ছে যে ঈশ্বর দর্শন এবং ঈশ্বর লাভ। তা আমরা তাদের জন্য আমরা তার আশীর্বাদ চাইবো এবং যাতে আমরা আরো এগিয়ে যেতে পারি চড়ুইবেতির মতো, সেইভাবে সেই জন্য আমরা সেই ভগবান করে যাতে কাটাতে পারি করোনা কালে। আর সকলকে জানো সেই উদ্দেশ্যেই আমি চাইছি যে মনুষ্য জাতি যেন আজকে এই ভগবান করে কাটিয়ে যেতে পারে।
Wow, wonderful. Dhanyabad, apnake dhanyabad. Kamal said that, he quoted Ramakrishna, and also then he said that, human beings must be able to carry forward a better way, and that's his wish for the entire thing. And Ripples Festival and overall has been part of this journey of turning around, and he wishes everybody good luck and good success too. Dhanyabad, Kamal Babu. Now I come to Joseph. Joseph, your take on the entire webinar you attended before also. You spoke today and sitting in Singapore, you have been watching the festival, and so your concluding remark, please.
I think it's fantastic that for me, stuck in Singapore in this room, my quarantine, and yet I'm able to participate and gain an insight into Bengal culture. I mean, how precious is that? I mean, so the technology has actually opened up, and I would like to think that this is an opportunity, again, switching from a disadvantage that I'm here in COVID and being frustrated, but I'm able to experience Bengal culture as well at the same time. So I think one thing is that maybe, we need to change our perspective to look at things, and also take this as an opportunity to grow, to explore what are the possible areas. I mean, it's very sad that a lot of cultural events, both tangible and intangible culture, are being linked to tourism. And I've always said, when tourism, sneezes, when the tourism industry sneezes, the craft sector catches pneumonia, because we have no one to buy. But so we need to break out of that. And one way of breaking out of that, I feel, is to embed the primary products and the primary customers that is in the community, and not necessarily in external factors like export market and tourism. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Just a one-liner comment on this. Interestingly, Indian handicrafts, as we see, are mostly utility-based. That's number one. And secondly is that out of the 16,000 handicraft artists that we worked between 2004 till 2020, interestingly, 99.99% of their sales market was domestic.
Yeah, fantastic. Congratulations.
And and these villages were all marginalized. So tourism market was not there at all at the beginning. 2014 onwards, tourism started, but our tourism is people going to the village. And last year, 150,000 people visited. But this year, for the last 4 months, last 4 weeks, when we have been campaigning for people to go back to the audience, to the rural area, to the isolation, and interestingly, we have seen that over 42,000 people visited these villages, 6 villages I'm just referring, and 42,000, and every village has anything between 60 to 80 families working on a particular handicraft. And the overall sale has been above $80,000 in the last 3.5 weeks.
Congratulations.
Very, very interesting. And here, so definitely tourism helps, but at the same time, it is not only tourism. And thirdly, in this particular model of tourism, the difference is the artist is not going to the tourist hotel for just a performance, because worldwide tourists are also expecting to experience the culture. And this is an opportunity to experience the culture. And that's why they are loving to go back to the villages to see it. And also Corona helped us in that case to create the mood that it's in isolation, you can go there and you can spend time. And another very interesting part, observation, rural India didn't have really much of Corona. It's more of urban city-based issue that we are seeing it. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Joseph Lowe. The last concluding remark from Simon.
Well, likewise, it's really nice to be here. I think just on the whole digital thing, it's very true that I think the musicians who've done best out of it are those who've been most adaptable and have been able to embrace digital technology. And certainly it's given those people who are perhaps more technically aware or a little bit more inventive, it's given them an advantage. But it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. And I think we are now at last beginning to be able to see an end to this as the vaccine starts being used and being made. And you know, let's hope it's not too many months more before we can get back to something which is closer to what we all know from before.
And as
different
UK
things to imagine now.
UK is still under lockdown, is it, Simon?
I hear it's very, very much locked down. Yes, I mean, you know, the cases are worse now than it's ever been. So it's not a good situation here. But they have now injected, I think, 3 million people. So this is, you know, this is taking off.
Okay. Wonderful.
But,
Thank you, everybody. We thank again British Council, Jonathan Kennedy from Delhi, Director Arts of British Council, have joined us in the webinar. The Director Debanjan Chakraborty, the Director East and Northeast, and Paramita, they have visited the sites and were there. I was really very happy to accompany them for the last 2 days to all the sites. So thank you, Debanjan, thank you, Paramita, and thanks all my colleague. Anonna moderated the first day's discussions. The second day's discussions was moderated by my new co-director, Madhura, and all the colleagues who helped us, Debolina and entire team at the back end, and Orpon and everybody at the sites. Thanks to everybody, thanks to all the speakers, and thank you, audience, for joining us. And সকল শিল্পীদের ধন্যবাদ যারা এই রিপলস ফেস্টিভ্যালে আমাদের সঙ্গে ছিলেন, আছেন এবং তাদের সঙ্গেই আমাদের সারা বছর কাটে। So I just thank everybody because that's every day we spend time with them. That's our, and we keep on meeting Simon at different places. I keep on meeting all the music places in different countries, in different thing. And Dr. Joseph Lowe, it was really, really very nice meeting you. ধন্যবাদ, নমস্কার, লক্ষণ এবং কমল. Okay, so we end this webinar at this. So Ripples Festival, third and last webinar ends here. So thank you, everybody. Good night.